Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about the denaturalization process again. Many of you raised a lot of good questions, comments, and concerns in the comments section of my last video on this topic. So in this video I'm going to try to provide additional information to clear up how a US citizen can actually lose their US citizenship. First and foremost, welcome back to the channel. My name is Adrian Pandev. I'm an attorney who helps foreign nationals navigate the US legal system. And in this video I'm going to try to clear up more information and explain the denaturalization process in more detail. Before I jump into everything, one thing I want to mention right off the bat is that there were, a lot of comments that made it seem like, that, people are anxious and that I'm not understanding why people are anxious. And that is absolutely not the case, right? The goal of these videos is to actually reduce that anxiety of people. As you can imagine, many of my friends, clients, team members, even family members around me are all immigrants and they're all worried about this. So the bottom line here is it is absolutely, I don't record these videos to make it seem like I don't empathize or I don't understand people's anxieties or that I don't think any of your concerns are legitimate. Not at all. My goal is to provide additional information that when I'm reading the news and, I get the same feeds that you all get, I don't think certain very critical parts of these processes are not explained with significant amount of detail. And I think people should know about these additional details because it will help you better understand the process and just help you calm your fears in a lot of cases, right? And that is the goal. So please understand that, right? Before I jump into all of this. Now, first and foremost, right, I'm going to talk about the main topics. I can't address all the comments, but one of the first things that jumped out to me that many flagged is that so many of you are worried about crimes committed after naturalization. So basically becoming denaturalized for crimes that you've committed after you've become a US citizen. Well, that is an impossibility under the rule book. It cannot happen. You can only be denaturalized for if you've illegally procured your US citizenship or if you have willfully misrepresented or misrepresented material facts in those previous immigration applications. So once you're a US citizen, you commit crimes. Yes, you can be charged under the criminal code. Yes, you could be imprisoned. A lot of things can happen, but denaturalization is not something that can happen to you. So immediately, right, the idea of deporting US citizens, the way the rule book is written today, unless Congress, changes it, US citizens cannot be deported for crimes committed after they've become US citizens. They cannot be denaturalized and their citizenship cannot be taken. That's just an impossibility. So the second thing I want to talk about is this clear and convincing evidentiary standard. And many of you commented on this that although there's criminal denaturalization, the memo focuses on civil denaturalization where the standard obviously isn't beyond reasonable doubt. And you're absolutely correct about this. But I do want to talk about the standard because clear and convincing is a significantly higher evidentiary standard than normally in civil court. So normally in civil court, the standard is what's called preponderance of the evidence, and it just means more likely than not. So it's a tipping of scales, right? The side that's more likely correct wins and the judge rules in their favor. But when it comes to clear and convincing evidence, right? When the standard is clear and convincing evidence, like we have in denaturalization cases, you have to be substantially more likely. So think of a much bigger tipping of the scales to succeed. So it has to be substantially more likely that the individual should have never become a US citizen and was not qualified than not. It's a very high standard. Simply put, there has to be no significant doubt left in the judge's mind before denaturalizing someone. So the evidence has to be clear, right? It has to be precise, explicit, and it has to make it so that there's no doubt left in the judge's mind that this individual should have never become a US citizen in the first place. So let me illustrate this with an example because I understand the fear, right? What people are afraid of is that say you committed a minor, some kind of minor crime that is, say, just a minor misdemeanor, and that now suddenly you did that 30 years ago and someone can denaturalize you for it. Well, that's impossible. And the reason it's impossible is because minor, crimes that are not crimes of moral turpitude or aggravated felonies do not render you inadmissible. So basically, you can commit minor crimes and still become a permanent resident, still become a naturalized U.S. citizen. It is only certain crimes that rise to the level of, crimes of moral turpitude, aggravated felonies, that prevent you from getting these immigration benefits. So to illustrate this, for example, if you have one single DUI many, many years ago, that in and of itself is not at the level that you cannot naturalize, you cannot receive a green card in most cases. However, if you had 10 DUIs and you have repeatedly, put endangered society through those DUIs, yes, most likely you would have, if you, did not disclose those in your immigration applications, you would have probably not been granted those benefits because they're in the totality, they rise to a level where there was an endangerment of society. And that's where the way the Immigration Act is written, basically you cannot receive immigration benefits because those crimes. But the bottom line here is, that the reason that minor violations in the past cannot result to denaturalization is because of this clear and convincing standard. Because if there is doubt, in the judge's mind whether or not you definitely should have never received U.S. citizenship, well, then they can't denaturalize you under this clear and convincing evidentiary standard because it's a higher standard. So this is why we see denaturalizations in cases where there's serious crimes that were omitted and basically not disclosed during the previous immigration applications that the individual filed. So again, I think the standard is absolutely critical, and it provides a lot of peace of mind, even for those who may have not disclosed certain things that they should have in their immigration applications. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is, and this goes to basically the reports that I have read only speak of individuals, who are now being denaturalized based on this memo or close to it, who have committed serious crimes, So the most of the articles I read talked about an individual who was a child sex offender, but this is what I anticipate happening, and it's going to be these types of cases simply because of the clear and convincing evidentiary standard. The DOJ, even if they were to bring these weaker cases, they know that they're going to get shut down by the judges, and it's a lot of work. These cases are a lot of work. It's a lot of internal memos. It's a lot of drafting. And lawyers have to do it, and there's only so many lawyers in the Civil Division Office of Immigration Litigation where they handle these cases. So simply put, it's a giant waste of resources to put the very few lawyers the government has on cases that are not going to go anywhere, So by default, this is why all these articles that I'm reading are mentioning serious crimes, and that's why every denaturalization case I've ever seen involves serious crimes, is because spending all that energy, all that taxpayer money on trying to denaturalize someone who where the case will not meet the clear and convincing evidentiary standard is simply a waste of energy for the Department of Justice. And that is why I anticipate the new cases that come, because I do anticipate, and I agree that more of these cases will likely come, to target individuals who have omitted to disclose serious crimes in the past. That is what I anticipate, and obviously I could be wrong, but that is what I think will happen here. And so far, the reports and the news seem to indicate that I'm right, because I haven't read a single report of someone being denaturalized for something trivial or small at all. And then the final point I want to make, is that a lot of you are questioning the judiciary, and I understand why, because there are decisions, that you're reading, like the recent one about the nationwide injunctions and etc. And there's, people are losing faith whether the judiciary will act like a backstop, as I said in my previous video. But here's what I want to leave you all with, is that if you look at all the cases, right, there's so many cases, right, where questionable things were done by the government when it comes to immigration enforcement. And it was the judges who stepped in to really, bring people back from prisons they shouldn't be in, or release them from detention. So I do think the judiciary does act like a backstop, and that's why we have a neutral judiciary. And I know, people think that, most of the judges on the judiciary are also appointees of the same administration, but that's not really true, given that judges are lifetime appointees. So the bottom line is that even if I'm wrong that and what I think that the DOJ is not going to bring a lot of weak denaturalization cases against individuals who have, just minor offenses on the records, I do think that the federal judges will hold the DOJ to this high standard, and I do think they're going to make sure on their end that they themselves are not going to denaturalize people where there's any doubt whether that individual should be denaturalized. So again, I think when you look at all this in its totality, if you obtained your green card and your citizenship lawfully, right? Like there was no lying, there was no mistakes, everything was done properly, I don't see why you need to be worried about denaturalization. I just think that the system will not allow the Department of Justice to somehow denaturalize you, and I also don't think that case against you will ever be initiated. But even say you had some irregularities during your immigration process, like say you didn't disclose that you had a drinking ticket in college before you naturalized, or something of that nature. That in and of itself will almost guaranteed not rise to the level where you can be denaturalized based on a material misrepresentation, because that ticket alone would have never prevented you from becoming a permanent resident or becoming a U.S. citizen, right? So this is why I think that as a whole, the very vast majority of naturalized U.S. citizens do not need to fear this memo. And the goal here is to make all of you, sleep better at night. I will say this: if things change, right, and all of a sudden we start hearing that I am wrong and these cases are being brought and the judges are agreeing with it, then obviously I will record more videos to go over that and explain how I think people should be navigating that process. But as of this moment in time, I've read the memo, I understand it, what it says, I understand what type of cases the government brings, I understand the evidentiary standard, and I just don't see how a lot of law-abiding individuals, or even people who have committed minor violations in the past they didn't disclose, are going to end up getting denaturalized. So again, I just hope that this brings those of you who are worried watching this video a little bit of peace of mind. If you all have any questions, comments, obviously concerns, please post them in the comments and I'll do my best to record more videos like this. Again, my goal is to give you more information based on what I know, having worked these cases in the government and also outside of it in private practice. If you want to receive notifications when I post more of these videos, or you like the content, please subscribe to the channel, like the video. It really, really helps me, and I'll do my best to post more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.